Hey everyone, welcome to the Rybrary. I'm your Rybrarian. No talking in the Rybrary. Also, no serial killing, cannibalism, or necrophilia in the Rybrary, please. No judgment or anything. It's just health codes. And today I'm here with a little review for you of this book, Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Brite. Poppy Z. Brite, who now goes by the name William Martin, is an American author who is best known for the books he wrote in the 90s, a few different books. Lost Souls, Wormwood, and this one are kind of the most famous of them, I think. And they're all in the horror sort of genre. This is sort of a literary horror book. Yeah, it definitely feels like, the prose and the themes and stuff are taking center stage here as opposed to like the horror elements. Other terms that get used and applied to this book are transgressive horror and extreme horror, both of which I can see where people are coming with when they use those terms, but I don't know how accurate they are from my perspective. William Martin, aka Poppy Z. Brite, whatever you want to call him, is trans, but was still female presenting when he was writing all these books. And I saw a quote from him somewhere, from when he was still female presenting and still identified as a woman, saying basically, ever since I knew what gay men were, I felt like a gay man who just happened to be born in a woman's body. And after reading this, that is absolutely abundantly clear how true that is. This 100% feels like something written by a gay man, or at the very least a person who deeply understands what it's like to be a gay man, and who more specifically understood what it was like to be a gay man in the 90s when this is written and when it takes place. This is a serial killer story about two serial killers, one by the name of Andrew Compton and one by the name of Jay Byrne. Andrew Compton is a necrophiliac who has been caught and imprisoned, and at the beginning of the book escapes from prison in England. Jay Byrne is an American serial killer who's a cannibal, who no one kind of expects. He's a wealthy heir to a large fortune. So both of those characters are gay men who target young men, very young men and boys, teenage boys as their victims. The other two main characters in this book are Tran, a young 20 or 21-year-old Vietnamese boy who is gay and who is kicked out at the beginning of the book when his parents discover that he's gay. And his ex-boyfriend Luke, who they're very much in love, but who they kind of, things fell apart when Luke contracted HIV and started just kind of spiraling into nihilism. So Andrew, the British serial killer, escapes and makes his way to New Orleans, where this book takes place, and happens to meet Jay Byrne, the other serial killer, and they form a bond, and decide to start serial killing together. This was a sort of implausible aspect of this book that I'm like, so two serial killers just run into each other. It's not a big complaint or anything, but I was just like, my disbelief was not suspended quite enough for that. So I mentioned that this is at least mentioned in discussions of transgressive fiction and transgressive horror and extreme horror, and there's reasons for that, certainly. There's a lot of heavy, extreme, violent and sexual content in this book. There's an extra layer of that where all of this content has to do with gay men and the lives of gay men at a time when those perspectives weren't as out there as much. I wouldn't call this extreme horror. When I think about the other things that are called extreme horror and compare it to those, this is a very different beast. In a lot of modern extreme horror, the violence and reveling in the violence and in the disgusting stuff is the point in itself, kind of, and that isn't really the case here. Although there is a lot of violent and disgusting stuff in here, it's not quite reveling in it. It's treated sort of poetically and secondary to the character stories and the thematic elements and that kind of thing. This was written in the shadow of and was definitely influenced by the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer. And there's actually a quote at the beginning of the book about Jeffrey Dahmer. Poppy Z. Brite has been fairly explicit about the fact that this is, very influenced by Jeffrey Dahmer, and you can see that in the motivations and the thoughts and feelings of the two serial killers here. I think that in '96 when this book came out, and the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer were still recent, and those kinds of crimes of like cannibalistic and necrophiliac crimes were still not super in the public consciousness. It might have been seen as taboo to talk about in a book like this, and so it might have been transgressive in that sense. Also, like I said, transgressive in the perspectives of gay men and in the sort of frank look at the state of HIV and AIDS in the year 1996 and in the preceding decade. HIV at this time was still very much largely a death sentence for people, and was predominantly gay men in America who were contracting it and dying from it, and there's a lot of anger and nihilism in this book, that particularly in the character of Luke, who, like I said, is HIV positive and also has like a pirate radio show where he goes by the name Lush Rimbaugh, and sort of just spews his takes on his hatred for the world of straight people, and like what he calls breeders, and the hypocrisy and the lack of caring coming out of that world, and like the disregard for the fact that there's an epidemic going on, and is largely, if not outright ignored, then explicitly blamed on gay men. Though I said that, like, the violence and the sexual content and that kind of thing in this doesn't come across as transgressive to me as like a modern horror reader. There are actually two notions in here that are, genuinely come across as transgressive to me. One of those is that the idea and sort of the core maybe idea of this book that serial killers, like the two men in this and like Jeffrey Dahmer, it is possible that they can do what they do out of a kind of perverted and diseased sense of love. Both of the killers here make reference numerous times to wanting to kill their victims because they want either to never be left, or to when, in the case of Jay, who's a cannibal, he wants to really bond with his victims and to have them become part of him. And thinking about the genre of this book more and more, it makes me think of it more as like a gothic horror story, because at its core it is about love and desire and obsession and tainted love. Those are the themes that Poe worked with quite a bit. A lot of the terrible things that happen in Poe's works do come out of the same kind of perverted sense of love. One other way that I think that this is transgressive to my modern eyes is in this idea that is presented a couple times, both from the killer's perspectives and elsewhere, that some people are meant in some sense to be victims. Like it's in their soul to like try and find a victimizer, and that's a very upsetting notion, though one that is borne out. If you look at reality, people who get romantically involved with abusers, often it's a recurring pattern in their lives, and so I think there's some truth to that notion, although it's a pretty upsetting one. One of the things I liked the most about this book was the prose itself, which is very well executed. Fairly purple, though I not at all, compared to some other authors, and people who complain about this book being purple are, you ain't seen nothing if you think that this book is super purple. The writing ranges from, nice to gorgeous and beautiful at some points. Poppy Z. Brite manages to simultaneously make things clinical sounding, and also disgusting and also beautiful, and kind of all at the same time, and there's like a lot of deft word choice. It's also kind of amazing to me how Poppy Z. Brite manages to make you feel sort of happy for these two killers when they find each other. And these are like repulsive men, both of them. They're both terrible, awful pieces of shit, but it's painted in a way where, you know, you see them presenting their experiences and how they feel so alien to the rest of the world, and how no one has these kinds of, you know, experiences. And then, you know, when you finally do discover someone that like 1 in a billion, you know, or maybe not 1 in a billion, 1 in a million person who, you know, you connect with, when you feel so disconnected, and how euphoric that can be, you can't help but feel sort of happy for them a little bit, while also being repulsed. It's a magnificent, you know, sort of balancing act that he pulls here. I didn't love everything about this book. Like I said, the prose and the themes and all of that, and the character work are really great, largely, but the plot is sort of just passable. It doesn't really. It's just kind of there to hang the themes on and to give the characters things to do. It can also be kind of corny and angsty in a very 90s sort of edgelord way, that made me roll my eyes a couple times. It also had kind of a crap ending, which makes sense, you know, in the context of the, you know, the rest of the plot, and how little the plot really matters, that, you know, the ending wouldn't super matter all that much, but all the same, I love a good ending, and this didn't really have one. But while there are things that I, you know, didn't love about this book, it did sort of infuse me with the themes and really got me thinking about them, and about, you know, the perspectives of these killers and of the victims. So yeah, if you like more literary leaning sort of horror stuff, I would definitely recommend this. It's pretty short. It's only like 230 pages, something like that. It doesn't, you know, wear out its welcome. It's pretty punchy, and I'm intrigued enough to want to check out some of Poppy Z. Brite's other you know, horror books. So that is my review of Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Brite. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you thought in the comments. Please let me know if you've read this book and what you thought of it. Like and subscribe if you want. I would appreciate that for sure. Thank you for visiting the Rybrary, and you may now talk.